Life is like a staircase. You just gotta keep climbing. Wait, what? No, you don't. It's not a fucking escalator. You could stop. Otherwise, if you start to overthink it, you'll have trouble taking the next step. Overthink it? How the fuck do you overthink a staircase? What kind of fucking retard? There are no branching paths. No point regretting the actions you didn't take. They say life is a series of choices, but that's nonsense cooked up by the old and bitter. Yesterday leads to today, and today leads to tomorrow, one step at a time. What lies ahead? You won't know until you get there.
Hey, stop! That's gay!
You and Me and Her, originally known as Totono and in certain circles as Totino's Pizza Rolls, is a visual novel about choices, consequences, destiny, vows, cats, baseball, cock and ball torture, and the will of God. You and Me and Her is, as the name implies, a love triangle game, or as the game itself puts it, an NTR game. It's somewhat well known among visual novel circles, both as the game that Dan Salvato stole from and won't admit to, and as an all-around great VN. Personally, it's right up there with Sayano Uta, despite featuring significantly less rape, and, like Sayano Uta, it's a good beginner VN because completing it doesn't take 3 years. It originally released in Japanese in 2013, and as far as I know, playing it was limited to either learning Japanese or using a shitty machine translation. But just this year, in May, it was officially released in English on Steam. Now, of course, there were a lot of Doki Doki Literature Club comparisons, and while I don't think that's fair, since Totono blows it out of the fucking water, there's one comparison worth making. How many people played it? Doki Doki Literature Club became a cultural icon online. Totono, not so much. Costing money probably didn't help. But I firmly believe that while Doki Doki Literature Club is a pretty alright VN, Totono is a work of art, and more people should experience it. If you are at all interested in reading it, now's your chance, because this video is not meant to convince you why you should read it. It's meant to show you why it's a masterpiece. Therefore, I'll be discussing most of the story. You could still very much enjoy the story after watching this, and I would hope that after watching this you would be convinced to read it if you haven't, but if you care about spoilers, here's your warning. But, before we go, if you're a poor fucker and you've already fallen in love with the sound of my voice, I streamed this entire game, and it's up on YouTube, so that's an option. If, on the other hand, you despise me already, but you're still a poor fucker, this guy played through the whole thing with no commentary. So, whatever you do or don't do, please come back so I can convince you this game is art. After the nonsensical staircase babble, you, as the faceless main character, are sexually assaulted by a deranged gamer girl, but not before finding a cell phone with God calling, and you don't answer the call from God, and then you watch a video game cutscene of that deranged gamer girl assaulting you seconds before it actually happens. It's like poetry.
It's stylistically designed to be that way, and you can't undo that.
This call could, symbolically, mean more than an anime non sequitur. You had a call from God. You didn't answer. We'll get back to that. The gamer girl, after forcing you onto the ground, attempts to seduce you with a thinly veiled offer of sexual intercourse. You were given a choice.
Nice try, but I'm no deviant.
But even if you do succumb to the promise of getting zappy, you are interrupted. Sone Miyuki, your childhood friend and resident tsundere, for now, threatens your life and the gamer girl's for attempting to commit the vile act of premarital sex. It's extremely apparent at this point that this is your choice, between Aoi, the sex-crazed, smelly gamer girl who breaks the fourth wall and transmits 5G signals, and Miyuki, the childhood friend who threatens blunt force castration. Except the game just got done telling you that there is no choice. But then again, the game said a lot of shit in that staircase part, and it sounded like nonsense to me. Oh, and before we go, we're introduced to the ever-important bro character, Yutaro. He accuses us of being a normie. He runs the Boys and Dreams Club. You know, because they're boys. And they have dreams. Boy dreams. Not in a gay way. Except yes, actually. Except yes in a gay way, if you know what I'm saying. But not gay enough. If you know what I'm saying. If he's gay, why did he fuck my girlfriend? The next day in class, we learn that the trap is a gamer himself and told Yutaro that the game we saw on the rooftop was a cult classic NTR game. This, then, is the script. Inside the story of the game is a written copy of the story itself, the way the story is meant to go. All the characters are but actors in this drama. We already know this because we're reading a visual novel, but the characters in the story itself could also come to this conclusion by reading more of that visual novel, but they don't. Outside of emergencies and the initial curiosity, the main character does his best to never fully read it. Aoi wants to be friends with the main character and Miyuki. Miyuki says no. Then Aoi blackmails Miyuki into being her friend.
Friendship ain't about trust.
This is an important detail, because after this, Miyuki viciously bullies the gamer girl, and the game does its best to make you think of her as a big meanie, and to think of Aoi as the defenseless gamer girl of your power fantasies. But Aoi started. Remember that. Aoi also continues her gamer talk, saying that the protagonist needs to end up with the main heroine. That's her motivation for the blackmail and for basically everything else she does in the game. As she sees it, you and Miyuki must end up together. There's no other option. Or, in classic visual novel terms, there's no other true route. So she will do her best to get you two together. And so the long bullying starts, and we are also introduced to the tomato juice. Yes, I'm serious. Tomato juice is an oft-recurring element in this game, and every other recurring element of this game is a very clear thematic symbol. But the tomato juice... I've got nothing. What the fuck does the tomato juice mean? That things in life that are good for you aren't as tasty as things that are bad for you? Or maybe because Aoi and the main character are the ones who like drinking it, it's a symbol of taking the easy way out? Miyuki, for instance, is a great cook. She puts a lot of effort into cooking delicious and nutritious meals. Aoi just drinks tomato juice with the idea that it's got all the vitamins and shit you need, so it's good enough, and she can just eat junk food after that. It's her gamer fuel. Or maybe it's just fucking tomato juice. That's possible. We then meet Miyuki at the batting cages, another symbol, we'll come back to that, and she explains why she doesn't want to be friends with Aoi. Basically, Aoi's a loser, but she chooses to be a loser of her own accord. Miyuki used to be a loser, and then she worked hard to become more social and successful. And she sees Aoi as a demented gamer, stuck inside her escapist fantasies, and Miyuki wants no part of that. It's escapism! Can't you see? It's not healthy. We basically force her to be friends anyway, though, because the gamer girl's cute. It's worth mentioning that Aoi now reveals she sticks metal objects into electrical sockets. She is a literal retard, and the furthest a relationship with her should go is probably the friendship stage that we're currently at, especially since she wants the MC and Miyuki to get together. So remember that. Also remember that if she does anything weird, she has actual brain damage, like 100% real brain damage. She's 2 corn dogs short of a picnic. Yeah, I should probably mention this game has a very interesting translation. Walking home one day, Aoi tries to seduce you. Do you want me? Aoi's an option too, you know. Are you worried about Miyuki? Don't be. There's nothing wrong with wanting more. You can just use me, and... It's worth mentioning that she, during this part of the game, keeps bringing up her relationship with God, how she calls him and relays info to him and such. These lines might give you pause. Is she really from God? Or from someone else? Of course, the main character is a fedora tipper, so you tell her that she isn't some toy created by God, and she starts crying. There's a conflict starting to be revealed in Aoi. She wants the main character and Miyuki to get together, although want maybe isn't the right word, because on top of wanting it, she makes it clear that it must happen. Almost like it's the right thing to happen. But she also wants to fuck Shinichi. That's you. You're Shinichi. Oh shit, I just got the tomato juice thing. No point regretting the actions you didn't take. The actions you didn't take. Tomato juice. V8 tomato juice. No point regretting the actions you didn't take. Coulda had a V8.
Wow.
This is around the point where you start getting some bad endings. There are a few ways this could go, so I'll talk about the route I went down, but in the end, it isn't a huge difference, and the game assumes, in general, what you're gonna do. Aoi starts to activate her anti-cucking powers, saying that she's going to rewrite the world so that Miyuki can't end up with anyone other than Shinichi. You are given the choice to stop her or let her do it. Like a real gamer, I was playing this game to get all the endings, and the first ending I wanted was Aoi, so I stopped her. If you stop her, Aoi continues to try and get Miyuki and Shinichi together, but it doesn't work. She reveals that Shinichi is in love with Miyuki, and vice versa, but that just makes Miyuki angry that you confided in Aoi and didn't tell Miyuki how you felt. She runs off. This was fated to happen, sooner or later, Shinichi says. Aoi seems very interested in that word, fate. You made the wrong choice, Aoi says. You need to reload your save file. This is good advice, because the rest of this ending plays out pretty badly. Miyuki doesn't talk to you again, you never work up the courage to confront her, Aoi disappears, maybe to convince you to reload, and you end up as a 20-something sad sack working a dead-end job, eating dinner alone while watching Miyuki on TV and crying. This was, Shinichi says, the path I was fated to take. Is that true? Or is Shinichi just a big nihilistic pussy? The game ends abruptly there and spits you back to the menu. This was my live reaction. This is too real. Stop! Shut the game off! Oh, it's over! Oh no! This is such a bad ending! No! After that, the choice is pretty obvious. In terms of the story, you can let Aoi change the world and end up with Miyuki, or you can watch Shinichi end up alone, forever. In terms of your outside gamer knowledge, though, you'd probably just assume that you can still get with Aoi if you really want to, and letting her change the world is just the only way to proceed, so that's what you do. You reload, you let her activate the anti-cuck patch, or that's what I did. Anyway, maybe you just stopped after the bad Shinichi ending and just believed Shinichi when he said that it was fated to happen. Probably you didn't do that, but if you did, that's a pretty fucking artistic thing to do, and I respect it, you maniac. So Aoi changes the world, and the game's intro plays, which is a nice way of telling you that there's still a lot left to do. One of the immediate changes to the world is that in the scene where Miyuki gets super angry at you, there's now a kitten, and she's distracted from breaking all ties with you by a cat. Really fucking clever, Aoi.
You're a fucking cat, Harry.
I'm a what?
A cat, by the way, and not a puppy or something similar. Cats, which have 9 lives. 9 chances. They are a symbol of second chances. But it's also a black cat, a symbol of bad luck. You can try again, it seems to say, but nothing good will come of it. Later, Aoi, because she's retarded, gets lost in the rain, and you find her by looking at the in-game visual novel again. From here, I can't really detail every noteworthy scene because this video would never get past the first stage, but here's a few important points. First, Aoi and Miyuki become real friends and clearly start to care for each other. Second, Aoi reveals that she loves Shinichi, but is a friend, but also maybe more than a friend. As she says, maybe there could have been an Aoi route. Clearly, she didn't listen to the staircase rant. There's no point regretting the actions you didn't take, you dork. Third, you tell Miyuki that you used a video game to predict the future. This is extremely important to the story. Aoi loses her phone shortly after this. The phone she used to call God and change the universe. And fourth, the main character starts fantasizing about kissing Miyuki. There's also a legend about how if 2 people kiss on the roof of the school, their love will last forever. I say kissing, while in reality, I know that in the original, it was probably sex. I don't know that for sure, because I played the censored Steam version of the game, where all sex is replaced with kissing, which is fine by me because, and this is probably the most controversial thing I'll ever say in my life, the censored version is better. Don't at me. Shout out to Molly and the translation team. From here, you're basically guaranteed to end up with Miyuki. There are a lot of dead ends and bad ends that you can get, but ultimately, you will end up with Miyuki, you'll kiss her on the roof, your love will be eternalized, and you'll get a super happy ending. For me, this happened after I prophesized the perfect scene, which I can't help but show off here. The most Kino thing in the world right now would be it's like a super fucking intense moment like this. The ball shoots at him, he swings, he misses by a fucking mile, and like the camera holds like real serious for a while, and then he just starts laughing. And laughing with tears of joy running down his face, and he hugs her, and that would be the most Kino fucking scene ever.
2 seconds later.
missed. My swing misses completely. I promptly collapse to the ground. Oh, what am I, a fucking genius? I was trying to get the owie route this whole time, but the scene is just too fucking perfect. The Miyuki ending is everything I could have asked for. With Aoi's motivation, Shinichi gets the girl. If only we could stop there. But we're all gamers here. How could we stop when there's more game to be seen? We gotta see Aoi's route, right? So we reload, we try different choices, and we get different endings. Much worse endings. Endings like the one where we watch our girlfriend Aoi suck trap dick. All Aoi endings are bad endings, and it is revealed that Miyuki is aware of, well, of everything. She knows that it's a game, for instance, and that you are reloading and trying different routes. But she's in love with you, no matter what you do, because the kiss on the roof was real. You made a vow, and she didn't forget it. Everything else in the world resets when you load the game. She doesn't. If you keep trying to get with Aoi, she cucks you anyway, because she's a whore. And then you sleep with her anyway, because you're a whore. And Miyuki snaps. She kills Aoi, she kills you, then reprograms the game so that you're trapped with her forever. If you decide not to stay with her, not to have the Just Monica ending, then you eventually trick her and escape. Finally, everything comes to a head, the world is going to reset back to basically how it was before, and you must choose between Miyuki and Aoi. But before we can make that decision, we have to ask the question, what does it all mean? Well, my basic thesis is that there is a compelling religious interpretation of this story. Let me explain. There are basically three ways that this story can resolve before that final choice, and most players will see all three. These, in my mind, represent the three ways that you can live your life in a religious sense. The first is the sad, lonely ending. Shinichi ends up with no one, and nihilistically accepts his fate as inevitable. This is life without God. This is where we end up without grace. This is a man living by his own power. Shinichi by himself is weak, cowardly, and base. He's in love with Miyuki, but he doesn't confess to her. Doesn't do much of anything, in fact. It isn't as if he moved on and got with someone else. He didn't decide to focus on some other aspect of his life. He's just rotted away. No relationship, dead-end job, and worse, a dead-end life. This is a choice we all have, to stagnate. And in many ways, this is the most natural state of man, because it doesn't even feel like a choice. It feels like what happens naturally, when you don't choose. This is the path I was fated to take, because we're all sinners. We have the capacity to fall this low and much lower, and we all will, without help. The second option is the happy Miyuki ending. Aoi, who is by her own words sent from God, comes down from heaven to offer you a choice. Continue on your fruitless path or accept the help of God. He sent down an angel to wrought a miracle to change the path of fate so that you can be happy. Do you accept? If you do, you end up with Miyuki in what is an inspiring and heartwarming ending. Aoi helps Shinichi to raise himself up, to gain the courage he needed, to do the right thing, to face his problems head on. Even if Miyuki had rejected him at that point, it would have been a happy ending for that reason alone, because he faced his problems. But she didn't reject him. They accept each other's love and make a vow to love each other and be with each other forever. It's not perfect, sure. They had premarital sex, for instance, the absolute heathens, but it's a night and day difference between this joyous ending and the other one. And the game makes it very clear, over and over, that this is what was supposed to happen. Aoi says it explicitly. The protagonist needs to end up with the main heroine. But there is another option. And that option is where everything goes wrong. You see, so far we have a basic choice. Live our lives naturally, which we know would leave us empty, or accept the graces of God and be happy. It's a nice representation of the words of St. Augustine. Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it finds its rest in thee. The third option is to refuse to be unhappy, as in the first ending, but also to refuse God, as the second ending. It is the Luciferian option. Luciferian, but not satanic, to be clear. There's a difference. The satanic refers to the worship of Satan as God. Luciferian refers to doing what Satan, or Lucifer, did, which is worshiping yourself as God, or trying to make yourself God. In essence, the third ending, which is trying to get with Aoi, is trying to refuse the will of God, who tried to help you, but also trying to escape the consequences of that. As in the words of Aleister Crowley, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." You want Aoi? So you take her. It's as simple as that. And so what if it goes against the will of God? The main character often spurns the idea of God, and, as a player, we want Aoi. Why do we want Aoi? Well, as the story goes on, she becomes a very sympathetic character. That's understandable, but most people decide to go for Aoi right from the beginning. And how is she introduced? Sexually. It's lust that compels most people towards Aoi. In fact, that's another way in which the third option is Luciferian. Just as Lucifer is a fallen angel, so too does Aoi fall. She falls as we fall. Evil begets evil. And this option, this refusal of God, is even worse than that natural, stagnant life. The natural life was unfulfilling, but the Luciferian life is hell. You watch the woman you love have sex with the trap brother of your best friend. You watch as remorse twists and breaks the woman you gave your vows to, and you watch the cock and ball torture. But it isn't fair, you might say. I had no choice. I didn't choose for these bad things to happen. But of course, you did. It's true that the game railroads you a bit to bring home this message, and it's true that there's no way, before the very end, to choose to be with Aoi and not make the world hellish. If there was, you certainly would have chosen it. That isn't a choice. But neither is it a choice to cut off your arm and not have it bleed. God gives you a choice. You can follow him, you can live by your own measure, or you can turn against him. In reality, once it becomes a conscious choice, it's really only two options: to be with God or without him. It is, to again reference St. Augustine, to live in the city of God or the city of man. And it's a real choice. A real choice with real consequences. And just because those consequences are terrible doesn't mean it isn't a choice. I would say, for instance, it would be a terrible choice to give yourself AIDS on purpose, to seek out AIDS. In fact, the consequences are so obviously bad, you might say it isn't a choice at all. You might say that, but you would be wrong. It clearly is a choice, and that's proven by the fact that people choose it. There are people in the world knowing full well what AIDS is and how it impacts someone's life, and they then choose to go out and try to get it. Bug chasers, they're called. To give yourself AIDS is a choice that we all have, a very real choice. But to get AIDS and not have the downside of AIDS, that's not a choice. That's impossible. And so it is with God's will. You can go against it. You might call it foolish, and I would agree, but it's a real choice, and many people choose it. But to go against the will of God and be happy? Well, that's not a choice, because that's impossible. To think of it another way, Shakespeare was right. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. It's true, the game is saying. There is a script. It's in the game itself, and we are actors. We don't write the script. The playwright writes the script. But this playwright lets us choose our part. Will we play the hero or the villain? Will our character arc be a tragedy or a comedy? That choice is ours. This is not me trying to convince you necessarily that this is all true, but simply I'm trying to show that it is, I think, a compelling interpretation of the game's message. But there is one additional layer to it. Vows and not being able to undo your actions. You made a vow with Miyuki, and the third part of this game makes one thing extremely clear. Vows are real things with real consequences. Consequences especially for breaking them. Cock and ball consequences. But why did you break the vow? Because you wanted all the endings. You wanted to get both of the girls. And getting multiple endings, it's not fucking immoral, it's a video game. But the game tries to get you to question doing this because while it may work in a game, it doesn't work in real life. And that's another large part of the message. Because it isn't as if you went against the will of God rather than accept his help. You tried to do both. You tried to have it all. But in real life, you can't have it all. And every symbol in this game points to this. Cats have 9 lives, as they say, but we don't. You get 3 strikes in baseball. In real life, you get 1. And in a visual novel, you can save, you can reload, you can retry every choice. But in real life, every choice happens once. You can't go back. This game is not only saying that your actions have consequences, but that you can't undo them. If you made a vow, for instance, you can't go back and choose not to make that vow. And so now, with all this in mind, we can make our final choice. Do we break our vow and try once more to get the gamer girl? It seems like it could work this time, and Miyuki did kind of scare the hell out of me. Or do we learn our lesson, take responsibility for our actions, and play the hero's part? Well, I know how I feel about it. And the icing on top is a little Easter egg, thanks to the guy in the comments for pointing this out. Because in the end, Aoi agrees. We wish you the best of luck. Bye-bye. But Michael, what about the Aoi ending? What about that shit Aoi says in the game about her god being the god of visual novel? Don't you want to know what happens in her ending? No. Because life is like a staircase. You just gotta keep climbing. No point regretting the actions you didn't take.
It's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
Hey, while you're here, if you want to see more religious themes ham-fisted into hentai games, subscribe, donate to my Patreon, check out my OnlyFans, and, maybe check me out on Twitch where I stream this entire game. We're in the middle of another censored VN right now, this being a game about lesbians going to a Catholic school, making rape jokes and being killed. It's a pretty good time.